Great. Well, good morning, everyone. We want to keep you on schedule. My name is Nick Kern. I'm the founder and CEO of Numbers for Nonprofits. We help nonprofits manage money with mission. A decent amount of you on the call right now are current clients, and a few of you are friends of the firm. Right now, we are in 1099 season. So if you are looking to have help with that at all, reach out to me at the onset of this meeting. Lots of 1099s being filed this week and next, so we're trying to get ahead of the game and not take it right up to the deadline. Outside of that, we've had a lot of our clients who've passed their 2026 budget or are going to soon pass that budget. If you don't have a budget already for 2026 in your calendar year end, let's talk. Let's see how you're going to manage your organization heading into the year and what's important for you as an organization. A little bit about Stephanie. Stephanie, I go way, way back. She was one of my first clients with then friend when she was at Foundation for Madison Public Schools. I think they've rebranded since then, but I always knew them. Or the acronym was always a little funny and was never said out loud, but and then we've reconnected when she joined Ronald McDonald House of Dane County. She's on my advisory board, close friend. We were just talking about her son being in the accounting program at Whitewater last week. So Stephanie in advisory board, she knows that N4N talks about its culture and its people and our successes and our challenges at times. And so we came up with this topic of culture for you all. So without further ado, Stephanie, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Nick. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and Nick or Becca or Ella just warn me if folks can't see it. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you this morning. As Nick said, we go way back. And so I also just want to share, I am not an expert in this topic. But I have done some work, and I'll share a little bit about my journey, specifically here at Ronald McDonald House since I've been here. If there are questions, feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout. Nick or Ella or Becca, if you
Got you.
want to interrupt me, or if you think the question can wait for to the end, I will have time. I just can't see the chat when I'm presenting. So a little bit about me. I have a background in communications. I've led nonprofits. I've also worked in corporate philanthropy. What I don't often put on my resume is that I am an HR hater. Shout out to all the HR people. Love y'all. Thank y'all for all you do, but just not my thing. And I actually left my first executive director job because just managing people just like became too much. But left the nonprofit world, went and did some time with a couple companies here in Madison doing corporate philanthropy and employee engagement, and really found like a passion for taking care of employees and what that meant. And so I knew I wanted to come back and do something with purpose. And so I joined Ronald McDonald House Madison in late 2022. To give you a little context, I was their third leader in 24 months. And so when I started, the board asked me for a strategic plan at the end of my first 90 days. However, I quickly realized there were some serious culture issues that had happened, some of which was from multiple leadership transitions. So at my second executive committee meeting, I told them I really just couldn't deliver a strategic plan because the culture was in such a state that no strategic plan would ever be successful. And probably many of you have heard that culture will eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I realized that. And so really at that time, 2 months in, I realized that I needed to really work on the people part of things. And so the first thing that I did with my leadership team is we read this book, and it's called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. If you've not read it, I encourage you to read it, have your leadership team read it, have everyone on your team read it, depending on what's going on. I promise it's an easy read and it's a good story. I think I read it in my backyard in an afternoon. It's a really, really easy read. So I just want to highlight each of the five dysfunctions of the team, how it can show up in organizations, and then more specifically, what I experienced and how it was showing up when I joined the Ronald McDonald House. You can get this book on Amazon, so anyone who's starting to look for it. So the first thing is absence of trust. That is the first dysfunction. And really it comes, there's several ways that that can show up that are listed here. For me, I have really worked hard now at vulnerability. I have learned, and I want to be clear, if you're a leader of an organization, whether that's a board or that's on a staff, and it's really hard for leaders to admit vulnerability, right? You're supposed to be the ones with the answers and the direction and the vision. And so for you to be vulnerable, it takes some practice. And so I have found, though, the more vulnerable I am, the more my team members are willing really to share and be vulnerable with me. One of the other ways absence of trust shows up is like people don't admit mistakes or they don't ask for help. And so an example of this that I experienced on my first day here at Ronald McDonald House, there was a member of the team. He's a really big guy. He literally collapsed into a fetal position, crying on my office floor when he realized he had made a mistake. Admittedly, it was a pretty big mistake. And so at that time, I realized like this team really needed compassion and understanding that like mistakes happen. We all make them. We're all human, and that we will get through it together. And so that was one of the first things, but they didn't have that before. When someone made a mistake, I really think he thought I was going to fire him like on my first day on the job. And so that was like the culture that was happening here. The other thing I saw is sort of a guarded or a lack of connection. I often described it when I started as everyone was surface level nice. Because as soon as I was in a one-on-one with team members, they'd share frustrations and complaints and general negativity about what was happening. But when I would look at the whole team, when they were together or even interacting, even in the hallways or at meetings, like they were nice to each other, but there wasn't really genuine connection between them. The second dysfunction of a team is fear of conflict, specifically avoidance of discussions or hard conversations or debates. I knew our leadership team did not agree with other members of the leadership team, but just literally would not say it. They would, in a meeting, when I would bring forward the topic that I knew how one person felt, they wouldn't even address it. So again, it was sort of that surface level nice. And we all work in nonprofits, or many of us that are on the call today work in nonprofits. And a lot of the reason we do that is because we are kind, compassionate people. But a lot of the things, there were a ton of unresolved issues, which is also part of fear of conflict. And like the tensions and the resentment were so high. So by the end of my second month, I really wanted to introduce the concept of radical candor to the leadership team. I thought starting with the leadership team was best. And if you aren't familiar with radical candor, you can look it up. But basically, you can be honest and be kind at the same time. And so while no one had really problem sharing radical candor with me, they really avoided it with each other. And so that led to sort of artificial harmony. And everyone was really, I don't want to say fake because I think they were all genuinely nice people, but no one was really talking about what needed to be accomplished or how we can move the organization forward. The third dysfunction of a team is lack of commitment. And I just want to be clear, the team members that were here, they had a really strong commitment to the organization and to the families that we serve. But they really couldn't have discussions that they thought others would not agree with them, or maybe, so they wouldn't really have productive conflict, and decisions would just kind of stay where they were. I would encourage team members to talk to the person that they were concerned about something, and it went nowhere. Everything just kind of stopped. And so I was new, but I would ask questions and I'd get a lot of like, well, we just didn't know because, so we didn't do that because we weren't sure. And so then like nothing moved forward. And again, I think a lot of that did come from some multiple leadership changes that had happened before me. The other is, the fourth dysfunction of a team is accountability avoidance. I think it was just because of the transition in leaders. There weren't really many standards other than let's just keep doing what we're doing and getting by. There was one particular team member who was really just not getting the job done. The whole team knew it, many board members knew it, and she was a super nice lady, but no one would ever address or talk about how what she was unable to do affected them. I mean, they talked to me about it, but like when we would try to have conversations with her about it, that never really kind of transpired. No one would really want to talk to her about it. They talked to me, and I'll talk more about that situation in a couple minutes. And then the fifth is inattention to results. So I walked into a lot of baggage and maybe some personal conflicts, and I feel like the conversations I had with team members one-on-one was about what was best for them or maybe what was best for their department, but I wasn't always getting what was best for the organization. And there was absolutely no goal process, individual or otherwise. And really, in my case, organization was doing well. When it says under inattention to results, mission suffers. I wouldn't say the mission was suffering, like families were being served. The organization was just not evolving to meet the future needs and the growing nature of the organization. And they were really just getting by. I mean, we really didn't know what kind of impact we were making. I mean, we could run some data, but like we weren't really like digging deep on that. So I just want to start, like, I want everyone to know that the team that was here when I started, they were very committed to the organization. They believed in the mission, but just over time and, you know, some things that had just kind of transpired and the culture had kind of gone amok. And so I want to just tell you about our journey to building positive culture. I want you to know that I am not an expert. I'm only telling you what I've experienced. There's probably people in this call that have a ton more experience in this, so I always welcome to hear from them. I learned a lot from reading a lot of different books and then also just talking to other leaders about how they were building their culture. So it didn't start off easy. The first thing I did is right people, right seats. I clearly stated we were building a team for a growing organization and we needed the right people in the right seats. Some of you may be familiar with EOS. They may have heard this term. I didn't know about EOS, but totally support this approach. And I just need to tell you, some of the seats got hot because they had more expectations and goals. Some decided they just needed to look for other opportunities. There were others that were just invited to get out of their seats and maybe explore some other adventures. I shared just before about the one team member who everyone knew wasn't meeting expectations. Within 2 months of my starting, and she was in a really key role. Within 2 months of my starting, I did put her in a performance improvement plan. And again, such a lovely person, but the organization had already evolved beyond her capabilities and we were continuing to grow and we knew it was going to be much more beyond what she could give us. And so at the end of her PIP timeframe, I sat down with her and I just provided her with some space, respect, and some dignity as I asked her how she would like to wrap up her time with the organization. And we discussed that. And so I think if you are inviting someone to get out of their seat, get off the bus, however you want to say it, I think you can do so with like dignity and respect. And I think others around you see that you took care of that person and you respected them. The next thing I did, and it took me a little longer to learn than I would like. This is now my favorite saying. Nick knows this. I've said this multiple times, is it is better to have a hole in your team than an a-hole. We had someone who was great at their job, but was truly just toxic to the organization, not kind to team members, created distrust, but was like so good at their job. It was really hard to let that person go because of the role they played, and they were really good at it. I will tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. The greatest talent cannot outperform a united team. And your culture is built by what you as a leader allow. So unfortunately, I allowed their behavior much too long, and I almost lost some really, really good employees from it. And a team member's bad behavior will drive away good people. It kills teamwork. So when I say right people, right seats, I mean the skills, but I also mean the mindset, and how they're coming in and how they're treating others. And so if this is something you're going through, you may have to invite some folks to exit the organization due to poor performance that maybe hasn't been addressed. And some have to leave because they're just really not fit for the culture that you're building and the direction that you're going. I will share, for every empty seat, we went and found the right person for the direction we're going, and we've built a really, really strong team. And I'll share more about kind of the results of that and later in the presentation. But we have a great team. I'm really excited. I can say we absolutely have the right people in the right seats in our organization. So after we have the people in the right seats, I would encourage you to start building up how you want to show up for those that you serve and each other. So people call this lots of different names: values, working agreements, contracts, norms, operating systems. Here at Ronald McDonald House Madison, we created core competencies. And I should say it was a board member who encouraged me to do this. And she also thought it was really important, and she advised me to create them together. Like, it wasn't Stephanie's core competencies, it was Ronald McDonald House's core competencies. So you'll see here on the right of the screen, these are our core competencies. Heart is really big for us. Heart is in our logo. I love a good theme. So anytime I can theme something, I always enjoy it. So we started really with just a survey. I said, tell me what qualities are absolutely necessary to be employed here at Ronald McDonald House Madison. And I got a lot of responses, and I was able to kind of categorize them and analyze them and put them into some general themes. And then the next thing is I shared those themes at an all staff meeting. And I said, this is what I heard from you. Let's talk about them. And so we talked about them, and people brought in their perspective on why maybe something wasn't a good fit or why something was a good fit. And then I did a follow-up survey on those themes and asked people to rank them in order. And that really helped me kind of like hone in on our 5. And so once you've done that, you can take the top 3, 4, 5, however many you like, and kind of bring that back to the team and say, this is what I heard from our discussion, from my follow-up survey. Like, these are our 5. So our 5 are mission-driven, collaboration, integrity, inclusion, and adaptability. And then we really just dug into each of those. Once we had consensus, like, yep, those are our 5. And we defined them, and not the Webster's dictionary defined them, like what it means to be mission driven at Ronald McDonald House. And so as you can see here, under each, kind of how we define those, I will say then I had to take them into a theme and make sure they spelled heart, but that's just me. And then I took them back for a final time and said, here's what I've heard. I want to reflect. I want us to discuss. Let's talk about all the descriptions, what is missing and what isn't captured. And so it truly was a staff process. These have been in place for about 2 years. We're about to go back and just review them to see if anything has changed as a team or if we want to adapt anything a little bit. But I think what's most important is once you have this in place, and I will admit this took some time. It took probably at least a quarter, like kind of going back and forth between surveys and conversations. You have to keep them in front of your team. And so we do this in a couple of different ways. We have our heart wall. You can see the picture here. The theme or our competencies are going across the top. And so this is visible. It's right in our hallway. It's right outside my office. And we ask staff to recognize any other staff member who they see living out our competency. And we ask them to write one a week. And so you'll see I zoomed in on one of my hearts that somebody had written for me, so you can kind of get an idea of what that is. But it's really a visible way. People walk by this. I do love sitting in my office, and then I'll see someone stop and start reading them. And I don't think they're always reading theirs. I think they're probably reading their, others to see what others have done. It's a great way for peers to recognize peers, for leadership team members to recognize those either on their team or maybe on another team. And it's a great way for those to even recognize our leaders on ways that they're doing. We also do at our monthly staff meeting, we have a heart award, and it's for a staff member who's demonstrated a lot of heart, meaning our core competencies since the last meeting. So the person who received it at the previous meeting awards it to that person. It is like a little tiny golden heart. It wasn't even very expensive. But it's always exciting to hear what people say and why they're awarding it to the next person. And then for me, I truly feel if something is not part of someone's performance review, it really doesn't get done. It's not as important if it's not part of the review. So all of our staff members are evaluated on these competencies, how well they are performing these competencies in their day to day, not only how they're showing up for our families, how they're showing up for each other, and all the ways that we've defined. And so each staff member does get a score on each competency, and then this scores are averaged as part of the bonus calculation if we have a bonus, or their average score for all of their performance reviews. I should also just mention we do send out an anonymous survey to every staff member to evaluate all of our leadership team members, including myself, on how we are doing on those competencies. And if they give us any person a low rating, they are asked to provide more details about why they give a low rating. So if they give me a 1 on adaptability, they have to say why. And again, it's not anonymous, so unless they identify in some way, we don't know. We've done this the last 2 years. Yeah, 2 years now. This will be our 3rd year, and actually the staff has asked that we now evaluate everyone, so they get a chance to look across the organization and provide feedback to everyone and how they show up in those competencies. And so we have found this really, really helpful. I should just mention for me, that survey about my performance and competencies is shared with my board president and my HR committee chair. So like that does hold me accountable.
First question, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Does this evaluation and core competency apply to the board? Great
Oh,
question.
that's a great question.
It is.
I would love for it. I mean, we've definitely shared our competencies with the board and what's important to us. So they all know about that. They know how we're showing up for one another. And I will say the HR committee, which has board members on it, and our executive committee, they are probably more familiar with this and how we're doing it. We are not evaluating the board. I would say if you have maybe a smaller staff and a more involved board, we have more of a governing board. I think it's a great opportunity for you to incorporate something like this with your board, as long as they're open to that. Oh, it's a great question. I'll bring that to my board tomorrow. I have a board meeting. Maybe I need to evaluate them on core competencies. So I have mentioned surveys a couple of times, and so because I think it's really important for employees to have a voice, and so we do quarterly pulse surveys. We just finished one. It just concluded last night. And for the most part on this survey, and I'm happy to share it if anyone ever wants to see our survey, it is not state secret. I will share it. For the most part, the ranking questions remain the same over time. So we can see trends. So we ask them about workload, do they, just the common things that you would want to make sure that you have in a positive culture. Those questions, how we ask them, remain the same. We do rotate some open-ended questions to get feedback on particular topics. So for example, a couple years ago, our HR committee was working on revising our employee handbook, and we were considering changing our holiday approach. We were still going to give everybody the same number of holidays. We were just going to be less restrictive and only do some main ones and then give floating holidays for the rest. And so we gave the staff those options. We put them into a quarterly survey and said, we'd like your feedback. Here's what we have now. Here's option 1. Here's option 2, or give us another option if you're interested. And what we learned is everybody liked how we did it. And so no one wanted to change. So that was good. So we do change those open-ended questions in the survey on particular topics that we want to dive into. If you're going to ask or do surveys, it doesn't have to be quarterly, but I say do it regularly, do it often. Maybe it's not as long of a survey as we do, but I also say you have to share what you heard. So once I get that survey result, probably today, I'll go through the results. I will share it with our leadership team, and then I will share it with the entire staff. Like, here's what the feedback was. It's all anonymous. So if someone's identified themselves, I'll get rid of that. But generally, I just share it, all the comments, all the things, just as it is. If you have particular questions or concerns that have come up through that, I think you have to address them when you send the results. If it's like something like a question and you have to answer it. Sometimes I can tell what team it came from. And so I'll say to the leader, like, this is very obviously your team because of the nature of the question. Like, can you talk to your team and answer this question? But we do share results with our leadership team, and leadership team does discuss them, and adapt. If we need to adapt something, we will. And then our HR committee sees it quarterly so that they can take a look and kind of maintain and kind of give, and they're all kind of HR experts, so they give me advice. In addition to surveys, and I do love a good survey, but I also do I also do twice a year stay interviews. So I call mine engagement conversations because I didn't like the term stay interview, but these are really just like why people are staying with the organization, what would make them leave, and what would make them more engaged. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at. I share the questions that I'm going to ask them in advance. The questions change, but like really what I'm trying to get at doesn't ever change. And I allow them to prepare for that discussion. I'll be honest, and when they get to the meeting, I say, we can talk through the questions, we can skip around, we can answer the questions you want. You don't have to answer anything you don't want, or we can just talk. Most of them have prepared and they're ready to, talk about the questions. In the times in the quarters where I don't have an engagement conversation scheduled, I have step level meetings. So I meet with the staff that don't report directly to me. And these meetings are very informal. There's no questions in advance. I just let the staff member decide what they want to talk about. If they want to ask me questions about something that's on their mind, or if we just want to sit around and talk about their family. For the most part, they all kind of come in with like a question that's kind of like been burning in them, but they want to ask. And I think having both of these allows all staff to know that they can come talk to me and share their feedback, whether it's during these conversations or another time. And so I will say for the engagement conversations, I do a summary of the themes that I've heard, and I do share that with them. I don't do it with the step level meetings just because those are kind of all over the place. But with the engagement conversations, I do share kind of the themes that I have heard so that they know that I'm listening and open to that. Now, I also just want to share that a lot of times they say things in their surveys that I'm like, ooh, that's hard to hear, or not exactly what I, was hoping, right? And so, and I have to really step back sometimes and like kind of check myself and say, like, they're just making suggestions to make things better. And maybe they don't always understand the full context of what their suggestion means, the fiscal implications, whatever. But I do sometimes, and I think I think I'm just being vulnerable with all of you, that sometimes it's hard to hear what they say. I don't think they're providing anything negative. Everyone's very happy in their work, but like everything can always be better. And so I have to continually remind myself. And so when I get suggestions, I often do that. But I do think it's important that if you ask often, you share what you heard with them. And if something comes up as a concern, especially if it comes up multiple times, you have to address it and explain it. It will build better trust in your leadership, and it will help you make better decisions. Sometimes though, it's hard to swallow after you've done a lot of work to improve in a culture, and then somebody brings in something, and you're like, "Ooh, like I really worked hard to make that better, and now they're suggesting something that's a change."
Stephanie,
Um, yes.
how then, so you're going to get all this feedback, and then if you don't do things, then you get the feedback that, well, I give feedback and I don't feel like the firm does anything or the organization does anything about it. What kind of response would you have to that?
Well, I haven't, so admittedly, I haven't gotten that because I address the feedback. Like if they make a suggestion for a change, I will explain in an all staff email or in an all staff meeting, like we heard this. I want to explain to you why we can't do this. So I'll give an example of that. We have our front of house team that has to be here, all the time, making sure we're taking care of families, checking people in. And then we have our back of house team. That's our fundraising, our administration. And so I've gotten a lot of suggestion for summer Fridays, which, mind you, I really want some summer Fridays too. But it's not really equitable because our front of house team really can't do it. We need them here to take care of families. And so to give that to the back of house team doesn't seem equitable. And so I just explained it. Like we've heard this. So I think if you were going to get feedback and if you're hearing it, I think you need to explain to people why. And if it's a fiscal decision or if it's just something you have to explain to them why you've heard their feedback, but maybe why you can't do it. I would say if you've heard it, you haven't addressed it, and you're not listening, like then they don't feel like their feedback is important. So I think that's why it's important to have that step to share what you heard, address the questions, address the concerns. Even if they still don't agree with you, they're going to understand your perspective of what maybe why you can't do something, or
Perfect.
at least they're going to understand it.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's perfect.
Yeah. All right. So obviously recognition is really important. I will tell you, you need to recognize your employees authentically and timely. Don't let it get too far away from you. You can do it privately. You can do it in staff meetings. You can do it in board meetings. I would encourage you to do it regularly, and you don't have to have a lot of fanfare. Just let them know you saw what they did and that it made a difference. And also, if you know your team members well, if you know they don't like to be called out publicly, respect that, but like don't forget to appreciate them privately. Sometimes those who don't like a lot of fanfare, like I don't want to say we forget them, but like because we know we're not going to say it in an all staff meeting because they're not comfortable, like we kind of forget to say it. So I would say if you know your team member, I have a team member who doesn't like that, I have to make really conscious effort to make sure I go and recognize them privately. I would also say your recognition should always be more specific on what it was, what they did. I saw you X. I appreciate that because Y. You're a great team member, blah, 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 blah. We do that, sort of, and also providing an opportunity for peers to recognize each other. We do that through our Heart Wall and our Heart Award. We also have something we started a few months ago, probably last fall. We call it Wednesday, and it's just on our Teams channel that has our entire staff in it. So I just asked the team, like, hey, share your win for the last week. And they'll put in a win, small, big, whatever it is. And then to watch other people like it or comment it, it also like allows them to kind of share pride and others to recognize that. And it also gives us an opportunity to kind of know what's going on maybe in our department that we don't work with, every single day. So I would just say it's important that you tell them how much you appreciate them. And yes, everybody likes money. So I'm going to say, yep, money for sure. Gifts and events, all those things are really, really nice. But sometimes a heartfelt conversation or even a handwritten card goes a long way. Those of us that work in development and fundraising, we also know a handwritten card goes a long way with our donors. Sometimes it goes a long way with our team. So I really see, here's a quick recap of the 4 basics that we did to really help create our strong workplace culture. I'm also really happy to say, like, it truly works. In 2025, we served more families than ever before. Like, we knocked all the other records out of the park. We have an expansion on the horizon, and we beat our fundraising goal by about $500,000. So when I say, like, nothing beats a united team, like, I truly mean, like, a united team, they can, like, conquer anything. But I also need to tell you, it is a work in progress. We have some really strong pillars, but it requires continuous nurturing and feeding to really keep that good mojo going. And I just wanted to share before I open it to any questions, I want to share a resource I found a few years ago that really helped me with my leadership. I think I'm pretty empathetic, but sometimes a leader, I'm just like so deep that I kind of lose that empathetic part of myself. So I have this list at my fingertips on my desktop. I will tell you, And I have one of my team members on today in the presentation here. So she would tell you as well that I probably use at least one of these, maybe not daily, but definitely every other day. I have some favorites. I love 4 and I love 18. They're my pretty much my go-tos. But I also like my 10 and a 12 and 17. I use those a lot as well. I do know if I'm going into a hard conversation that I'll go back and like look at this list just as a quick refresher. So, as a nonprofit leader, whether you're on board or on a staff, like you have usually 100 plates spinning. But you also need to be there for your team because, especially when there are challenges, you've got to still be able to build that connection and that trust. So, I know Nick will send this out afterwards. I'm also happy to share this with anyone that's interested in having it. You can email me, but and then last, before I just open it up for questions, I'm not going to read these. You guys can take a look at them. Would love your thoughts on them, but I want to thank Nick and the N for N team. I feel like I've learned a lot being on their advisory board and learning from what they're doing to build their culture. As I said before, I am not an expert. I'm continually improving. I also have to give a shout out to the employer group. So we have a PEO, professional employment organization, and so the employer group takes care of our benefits and our time sheets and payroll and all of that. So I'm not worried about a lot of operational sides of HR. I can really focus on the culture aspect. So I really could not do it without the employer group and the team there. There's such a strong support for me when I've struggled of like how we handle, inviting people to leave our organization. They were really there for me and helped me guide me and make sure I did everything by the book. And so if you haven't, if you're at a place where you're like, I really need to build strong culture, but like I have all of these things I have to worry about on HR that I can't get to it, consider a PEO to help you with that. And there's my strong recommendation for the employer group. It's not a commercial, but they are part of our team. They may not be housed in our offices, but I really view them as an intricate part of what we do here, and an extension of our team. So
Just
with
a
that,
comment. Yes, Lisa, we will send around copies of the slide deck and Stephanie speaking to all the attendees and even those who RSVP'd and couldn't show up this morning. So, um, yeah, questions.
yeah. And there's a lot of great people on this call. I saw the RSVP list. So I'm going to say, I think this should be a discussion. Like I can tell you
Right.
what we did, but I think there's probably others that have great ideas as well.
I would agree with you, Stephanie. It's just more of dialogue than anything. You know what I see, and this is the accounting brain in me coming out here with this statement, but you talked about like you have to do X number of surveys and Y recognitions and that. Like, do you have that frequency and everything kind of like in a calendar for you to initiate and since you've done all of this stuff, have you modified anything after given some feedback on, oh, this is too often, not enough, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do have a calendar, so I know what I'm doing in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So like I have like sort of an HR guide and my HR committee, which is stacked with just like awesome HR folks and all across the realm. They keep me true to it. I would say like I've asked questions, like I've said, like, are we doing our pulse checks too often? And the team goes back and tells me no, they like them quarterly, which I sometimes think is crazy, but because I always think, oh, maybe we can do it twice a year and I can get down, but no, they like the quarterly. And I then also see the cyclical nation, like our summers are busy, busy, busy. And I can see like the net scores going down like during that time frame because people are just feeling it. But then like January's are like sky high. So I've asked people like, should we change things? Do you not want to do these conversations? And everyone wants to do it. I think there is that we're all those of us in nonprofit really like to connect with people and we're kind of in a people business. So my team does like that. So I do have a strong calendar that helps guide me so that I know what to do when. But at this point, I haven't, I mean, we've altered things or moved things around a little bit, but not significantly.
Yeah. Stephanie, we've got a question from Beth over at SARS. Hey, Beth. How would you approach culture of a nonprofit different if you consisted solely of volunteers
Mm.
and the ED versus, you've got paid staff members
Yeah.
and volunteers. So
Mhm.
I guess you've got some exposure to volunteers. Are they in the
Yeah.
mix with all of the feedback loop or?
Yeah. So Beth, that's a great question. So we have about, I mean, our team is like 12 and we have over 300 regular volunteers. So if that
Wow.
gives you like an idea. And so I think for us, it really started with our team and has kind of gone outwards. Do they get formal like training? Have they been part of the discussions of how we build this? No, but I definitely feel like if you were to ask one of our volunteers, they would probably tell you they can feel it. And so I think there's lots of opportunities to take what we do here and kind of take it to a volunteer level, whether that's, and maybe, the ED leads it and kind of creates the foundation. And then as you bring on volunteers, you orient, in part of our board orientation, or it's in our board orientation, but it's also in our volunteer orientation. We walk them through our competencies. We walk them through the culture that we're building. And it's important for them to be part of that. And some of us have had invited some volunteers to exit when we didn't feel like they were truly aligning with where we were going. And I think it's also good to, I think you can take what I've shared here, maybe adapt it to fit your organization. So I think volunteer surveys have opportunities to hear that feedback. And then you've got to, circle back with them and say, this is what I heard. I want to address any concerns. So I think you can take it. So it might differ just a little bit. You can't put it in their performance review since volunteers don't get those, but you can have recognition both visible and on like walls or in newsletters, however you communicate with your volunteers.
Great. Another question. Can you talk about ways to keep up that good culture morale during times when you are extremely busy, especially when the work is emotionally taxing? Thanks, Mary.
Yeah. It's a great question, Mary. I mean, we are lucky that we're part of an organization that has a ton of hope most of the time, but we have, there's times where, the kids that, we're serving their families that they don't make it or they get a bad diagnosis. And so, and we're, just to give you guys how busy we were last year, we were at 121% occupancy. So we were like way over where we need to be. We're lucky to have hotel partners that help us, but um, we I think it really comes down to, as the leader, one, that recognition and appreciation. I think that goes a heck of a long way. And two, as the leader, if you just like roll up your sleeves and you're in there with them, whatever's going on. So going back to those things like, how can I support you? What can I do to help you right now? I think that goes a long way. I think my team knows like I'm going to be right there beside them when things really, hit the fan. They have no doubt that I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I haven't done myself or wouldn't do myself or currently standing right in the trenches with them. So for me, I think the best way is to show up. And I think that helps build morale, even when things are crazy.
Awesome. Um, Donna, from your team, I'll add that having a leader who steps in where needed, when needed, makes the busy, hard times much better. Good cap. Basically, you summarized that,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Thanks, Donna.
Casey, did your PEO help you develop performance reviews that are used with all the employees, or did you develop it yourself?
Um,
Did,
so I did a kind of a combination of things. I don't like to create from scratch myself. So I'm lucky to be part of a global organization. I just ask everyone, give me your performance reviews if you like them. People sent them to me. I worked with my HR committee. We kind of tweaked it. And then I did run it through our PEO to make sure I wasn't doing anything I shouldn't be doing. Like we wanted to simplify our previous review. Well, it wasn't really a review. It was just a lot of words. And there wasn't a lot of quantitative data in it. And so we knew we wanted to move to that. And so we've definitely taken strides over the last 3 years once we developed it. And we also asked for feedback from the team. We said, like, this is where we're moving. What do you think? So the PEO was involved, but we used other people. I think if I was to call them and ask them, they would have at least given me a basis to work on, but I wanted something more custom to the Ronald McDonald House and what we do. So I asked my peers across the country.
That's a good place to start. I love peer-to-peer help.
Yeah. Our
Um,
PEO does do a lot of other things though. They do maintain all of our personnel files. Like, so when I'm done with all of them and they've all been signed off on, I ship them over there and I know they have all of the personnel files going back. So that's also known. So.
yeah. Mary, the national group she's talking about is with her Ronald McDonald houses nationally. So not sure if Tenant Resource Center has something similar, but that's what that's talking about.
Or even
Um,
asking like, here in Madison, like asking in this group or maybe some of the other groups, like, does anyone have something they really like? And I don't know. I feel like people are pretty open to sharing stuff like that. I mean, it's not state secrets by any means.
Yeah. Kelly just wanted to share a small, she's with a small nonprofit,
Mhm.
one full-time, two part-time staff, volunteer run, came from corporate. Last year was a challenging one, on all fronts, and made the decision to become vulnerable with my team. It made the magic that was happened from that decision was incredible. My being vulnerable gave my team the permission to be vulnerable, and our team became even
Mhm.
stronger. So just validating what Stephanie said already about that
Mhm.
being vulnerable led to us breaking our participation in volunteer hours, and this is everything Stephanie's saying is resonating. So take that volunteering, I'm sorry, that vulnerability
Mhm.
to heart. Um,
Yeah. It's hard to be I mean, and I think my team would also say, like, we had a pretty serious situation that happened here in our house in summer, and I was like right on the front lines, when it happened, and like and like even talking about now, you can hear my voice, like it really impacted me. And for me to say to my team, like, this was really, really hard for me and I am struggling and I need to talk to someone and I need to care for myself. Like it also gave them permission to do that, whether it was something related to our work or something related to what was going on in their personal life. And because of that, like, I mean, to Kelly's point, similarly, what we did as a team last year just exploded more than I would have ever imagined.
all right. A lot of the improvements you made seem to have started with intentional strategic planning. Did you do that all in-house yourself, or did you use an outside organization to help with any of that? That's a good question. Either way, do
Um,
you have any suggestions for strategically planning for culture?
mhm. That's a great question, Mary. I feel like from a culture strategic planning, like it was pretty much done all in house. Like I started just reading a ton of books. I think I was lucky the five dysfunctions of a team also comes with a workbook that like tells you how to like then work through it with your team. And so I was able to take a lot that I learned from there and just started building off of that and really having the more conversations I had with team members, a lot of it started to come. So like from a culture strategic planning place, I mean, with the support of, TEG supporting me when things got rocky, kind of did it internally. Um, it was a lift. Like, I'm going to be really honest. Like, culture is a lift. You see tremendous results on the back end, but you've got to invest on that front end. And someone said above in one of the comments, like, I never got a honeymoon period. There was no honeymoon at all. And I think it was probably good. I mean, I did walk into a situation and it had to be repaired before we could even put a strategic plan in place to grow our organization. So from a culture standpoint, it was kind of all internal. There's a lot of good resources out there that I'm happy to share though. And I'm also happy to share any of my stuff, surveys, performance reviews, my questions that I use for engagement. I will share the gamut with anyone. So Nick knows how to find me. So
Absolutely. Yep. And I would just echo that, sharing is caring. It's very
mhm,
cliche, right? But like if you've gone through it, if you've learned from something, if you've had the bumps in the road and you can talk to a peer who's gone through it. That's why I just thought Stephanie doing this, and clearly the attendance bears witness to this. Like there's nothing better than to hear it from somebody who's lived it and learn from how they did it, what were their challenges, what were their successes, what are they still learning as they are going through
mhm.
it. Peer-to-peer stuff is my jam, and so I thanks, Stephanie, for sharing today. We still got a couple more minutes. If there's any last minute questions, I'll just share though real quickly. Our next breakfast with benefits is going to be March 10th, same time, place 8 to 9 Central Standard Time. We know we're starting to work with some clients outside of the zone, if you will, so we might have to adjust that time in the future, but for now, that's that. And Krista Wetzel from Mercy Dental Mission, you are a $25 Amazon gift card winner. So we do have another question here that just popped in the chat. Can you share the engagement interview questions in the meeting summary documents potentially?
Yes, I'm also going to put my email in the chat. Or my email is also available on our website, so you can look at the rmacmadison.org. But send me an email. I'll share all the things, but I can send you the engagement. My engagement questions kind of change a little bit, but I'll send you the most recent one, maybe the most recent two. So you can get a flavor of them. I do ask a fun question at the end just because it's my jam that I like to, give them. I was like, if we had a team mascot, what would it be? And it can't be Ronald McDonald. So.
All right, gang. Well, nothing like getting 8 more minutes back to kill a little bit of email before the 9 o'clock appointments. So I'll let you all go on to your merry ways. Thank you so much.